I ended up cashing in my 401k about 10 years ago. Went in, there was a lot of things that were learned the hard way. I've also had days where sometimes, dude, I'd be stressed as hell. And, 6, 7 years ago, like, dude, there was a couple times where I was drinking first thing in the morning because I was that frustrated and I was that stressed.
Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setback become the stepping stones to growth. Today we are joined by a guest who truly embodies that journey of turning frustration into innovation. Brendan McCauley is the founder of Coach Untangled and the creator of the Authority Protocol, a system born directly from his own experiences navigating the tech chaos many entrepreneurs face. With a corporate background in operations and systems, Brendan knows firsthand the struggles of tech headaches, scattered tools, and business systems that didn't fit together. Through trial and error, he found a way to merge his systems expertise with his passion for coaching. Now he helps coaches, speakers, and consultants untangle operations, simplify their growth, and scale with confidence instead of overwhelm. So, Brendan, welcome to FailCraft. Great to have you
I,
here.
I appreciate it, man. Excited to be here and yeah, excited to help your audience.
Fantastic. So quickly, let's dive in. You're now the systems guy who helps coaches untangle their tech chaos. But your bio is really honest about the fact that you actually did not start here. You wrote on your bio, like many coaches, I struggled with tech headaches, scattered tools, and business
Mhm.
systems that didn't fit together. So, can you take us back to that specific period of struggle? And what did that tech chaos and frustration feel like? And how did that very specific setback become the foundational trial and error stepping stone for creating, the authority protocol?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So I'll kind of take you back to the beginning of like how it even got me to that point where I was able to work with this audience and then kind of figure it out by myself and now help others to do it.
Okay.
So parents divorced when I was a kid, and then basically I turned to like binge eating just as a way to cope, and I pretty much struggled with weight all the way through high school. And as I began to transform physically, I really started to like master myself mentally. And that completely opened up this whole world of like coaching, of entrepreneurship, of personal growth and development. And I loved it. And on the other hand, my mom had been in the corporate background. Immediately that was just kind of the direction that I went to. Started, kind of rising through the ranks. And then my specialty was more in like the systems and the operations for a healthcare company. And so on the one hand, I had my normal, 40 job. So I would go there and like, that's just kind of what I was doing, but it wasn't really my passion. It wasn't what I was really fulfilled about. And on this other hand, I fell in love with coaching, and, it really started more in like the health and wellness spot because that's just, that was a huge piece of my life and I wanted to help others with it. And then eventually over time, I realized like, okay, it wasn't really something that I felt was going to be scalable that I could do and like just really make my main thing. And so kind
Mm,
of over a period of time, I opened up my, I guess like my repertoire to like different styles of coaching. So then it became a little bit of like learning how to train, how to coach, how to speak, a whole bunch of different certifications, right? And so over between like my undergrad, between all these different certifications to my graduate degree, I got all of these different plaques and then all this different knowledge. And I came to find out really quickly that just because you have training and you have certificates does not exactly equal clients. So,
yeah.
kind of like right out of the gate, I'm trying to figure out, all right, well, then how do I turn this into a full-time thing? How can I be the best at it? How can I love it? How can I make it make financial sense? So I was just basically, I went back to square one. I said, okay, like what are my skill sets? What am I really good at? And as I had started going through this whole coaching process, what I came to realize, like if I were going to take on a client, okay, well, how do I manage that client? How do I take notes on the client? How do I follow up? How do I know, okay, if they bought a session of, 15 meetings with me, how do I start, checking those off? And so between correspondence, emailing people, being able to see like where do they stand in the sales pipeline, all these things, like I had to test because I had no idea what to do other than just sort of like trial by error. So I was spending a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of time, a whole bunch of tools, trying this one, trying this one, trying this one. And then you come to start liking one, all of a sudden, oh, well, I can't do that. So I got to get this. And then it becomes just this like whole hodgepodge of a whole bunch of like tech, random stuff. And at the same time, I'm trying to learn that while also trying to make sales and then trying to figure out like, the marketing piece. So it was all these things that were happening. And A, to be clear on my message, B, to convert sales, B, to be, C, to be clear on my pricing and what that looked like. And then
Yeah.
D, to have a system that like makes all of this stuff basically just like work. So it was a lot of stuff that I didn't know what I didn't know. And then over a period of time, I started looking at a lot of my friends that were also coaches, trainers, speakers, and all the rest of it. And after talking to a lot of them, what I realized is they all said the same exact thing. They wanted to show up to a room full of people. They wanted to change lives, get paid. That's it. They didn't want to figure out the tech. They didn't want to figure out the headaches. They didn't want to figure out the automations. And so while like from a corporate perspective, like I liked doing those things, it wasn't really in a vertical that I enjoyed doing it or people that I really enjoyed doing it with. And so I was like, okay, well, can I take this skill set of like, systems and tech and just like, I like messing with that. And can I help my other friends that are coaches to do these things?
Mm.
And then just over a period of time through like my own, okay, learning what worked, learning what didn't work. Now I have the opportunity to help other individuals where they can just go out and like share their zone of genius. And then we get to handle all the back end techie stuff that usually drives them a little crazy. So that was kind of like where it started and where it got to now.
Fantastic, fantastic. That was a really inspiring story there, Brendan. So during that period for you, what did that overwhelm and frustration actually look like for you, actually look like for you day to day when you were trying to build your coaching practice?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of, well, it's a lot of time suck. It's a lot of energy suck. It's trying to, figure out things that there's no rule book, right? So it's like when you go to school, it's okay. Here's the book, here's the test, you study, you go in, you get whatever grade, and then you move on to the next thing. And it's very regimented. There's like a roadmap on how to do this versus I think when you are going to be any kind of entrepreneur and whatever it is, you're sort of having to, it's like sometimes it can be trial by fire. Sometimes it's, you're going to whatever the next marketing conference is or whatever, and you're trying to learn from individuals that are ideally, doing it the right way. And then sometimes we have to figure out, okay, well, what does that look like for us? And I'd say probably one of the biggest things that I've learned over time, and I think this is across the board for any entrepreneur, regardless of whatever it is, it's start with the end in mind of just how do you want your life to look like, and then build a business around that versus where I think a lot of people, what they wind up doing is they start doing all these things without the specific, okay, like here's how many clients I want to have. Here's when I want to do live events. Here's how many people I want to be able to speak to. Here's when I want to go on vacation. So it's like, if I would have known that, I probably would have approached these things a lot differently. And I think one of the biggest, from the failure of trying to figure out everything myself, the thing that I've learned now is anything that if I'm not a complete expert in it, or it's not absolutely required, I'd focus more on the concept of like who, not how. And so if there's other individuals that already done this, if I had the ability to just maybe hire them or barter with them in some form or fashion, let them come in, do what they're great at, and then, work on the other stuff. Yeah, a couple of things I've definitely learned along the way because I ended up cashing in my 401k about 10 years ago. So right
Mm.
around that end of 2015, 2016, it's like, okay, if I'm ever going to figure it out, like now's the time. And so,
Yeah.
went in, there was a lot of things that were definitely learned the hard way. Definitely, it certainly allows me to know what not to do after a period of trial and effort. And that's definitely where I try and help individuals today. So it's like, sometimes we take our mess and it becomes our message. And
Mm.
that, a couple of years worth of ups and downs and it's helped. It sucked, but it helps.
Interesting. Interesting on there, Brendan. So you mentioned trial and error. What's one specific error, maybe perhaps a platform that you tried that spectacularly failed, or a system that backfired that taught you a crucial lesson about what not to do?
Yeah, I'll probably throw out maybe just a couple basic ones that that most people know. So just for the sake of this, I won't use very specific names, but there's certain softwares that are great at like building funnels. There's certain softwares that are great at doing emails. There's certain
Yeah,
softwares great at like just tracking where somebody stands in the pipeline. And so up until maybe about 6 years ago, so High Level is the platform that we use specifically that I specialize in, which basically takes all of these different concepts, puts it all under one, and just makes it really simple. Because before I would have to super glue things together. So if like somebody comes in on an email list, for example, or if they come in on a funnel and I want to have them, followed up with. So if you're like, hey, Brendan, let me go check out your website, you may have to go to somewhere where then a form is entered, which then has to bounce over to something else, which then has to trigger something else. And so it can just kind of get a little sticky, not to mention expensive, right? So, because like a lot of these softwares at bare minimum might be, okay, $7, but then your average one can be 30 something, 100 something, sometimes like 297 something. So it's just, it can be a very expensive learning curve. And so that's the reason that we use the one that we do now and support others with that. Because I've had to go through that. Like I've had to super glue things together. And then if something breaks, well, now you have to try and like backtrack and figure out, okay, well, where did it come from? Why did that happen? So there's just a lot of things that, if this is your area of focus and what you do is tech and systems, like it's already fun enough as is. But if your skill set is in health, wealth, relationships, and like you just want to show up and coach, then like the last thing that you want to be doing is trying to figure out, well, why did an email not fire? So there's like small little pieces that I've had to go through. That I've just now learned, okay, great. Here's sort of like an ideal way to do it, just to keep it like super simple. And that's where I started kind of coming up with that authority protocol piece that just really helps everybody tie it together.
great. So, how did that personal struggle directly shape the authority protocol? What specific pain points did you build solutions for because you had experienced them yourself?
Yeah. So initially when I started helping individuals with this, like the biggest thing I wanted was like leads, and they wanted to be able to do it on a consistent basis. And so one of the ways that, and even when I used to do the health and fitness portion, we used to run what they would call like, a challenge, like a weekly challenge, monthly challenge, whatever.
Yeah,
And challenges are a great way to get a lot of people in a short period of time headed towards the same direction and then eventually having some type of win. And
yeah.
so you've probably seen like online virtual 5-day challenges, 3-day challenges. And so my goal was like, okay, can I systematize this whole concept to make it really simple? Because typically there's a lot of pieces that are behind the scenes that most people just don't even realize. So
Yeah.
my goal actually became, let me help you to run a virtual event so you can do the one to many. You can share a lot of value. You can build a lot of know,
Mm,
like, and trust, and it works great, right? So you can put yourself out there, even if you're new, if you're experienced, and it's a phenomenal way for people to get to just know who you are, and then you can say, hey, when you want to work with me, this is what it looks like, and you can sell a much higher ticket style offer, which is awesome. Part of what I realized is most individuals, even if they have an event and they're doing it effectively, they don't have the rest of the supporting systems that are typically needed. And what winds up happening is there's like this devastating lead generation gap. So even Ezekiel, let's just say like you ran an event and I were to come into your world and like you would teach me maybe all about podcasting or, how to use these platforms. Typically what happens, like if you go into somebody else's world, you hear about them once, and then normally for the most part, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. So the
mm,
question, okay, how do you build the rest of this digital ecosystem around you? So when you put yourself out there, it's not just like this massive burst of energy and then people forget about you. Now you bring them in, you can nurture them, you can provide value, you keep them with up to date with everything else that's going currently, in your world and around you. And then you can ascend them to work with you moving forward. So that basically, that was the whole entire concept of building a, what I call like authority ecosystem. And in that authority protocol, if you just put it as like a triangle, it's really three simple pieces. So the first
mm,
part is synergy, then it's systems, and then it's scalability. So synergy is just start with the end in mind. What are you looking to create, and be as crystal clear as you possibly can. So it's like, okay, I helped this person achieve this goal in this time period, and this is exactly what it looks like. This is how I show up. This is how much money I make. Like, it's just total clarity to like the one thing that you're really good at. Then can you put the systems behind it to be able to show up in that way so everybody sees, awesome, when I come and I work with Ezekiel, there's a white glove onboarding, like, everything's already dialed, it's already rolled in, like, it allows you to just do what you do. And then the scalability piece, that basically allows you to delegate, to be just focused more on your zone of genius and be able to put more people into your ecosystem, versus a lot of times people will build something, but the second that they have any kind of massive influx, it now falls all back on them. So the work is now on their shoulders, their responsibility. And this goes right back to, do you have those systems in place? Which a lot of times people don't. So they don't have a very solid foundation. It's just kind of like Rocky. It just kind of sits there. And if they get too much of a good thing, all of a sudden they can't handle it. So, I've had to kind of figure out, how can I go through those pieces to then have it really synergized and making sense, have it shown that way. So then the perception is there, and then be able to fulfill on it.
Hmm, that was really insightful, Brendan. So, what was the biggest mindset shift you had to make to go from feeling buried by tech to seeing it as something you could simplify and even teach to others?
Yeah, I'd say having a mission that's bigger than yourself.
Hmm,
So, like for mine, I went to a mastermind, and they said, okay, like, what is the number of people that you want to help, and what's the time period you want to do it in? And I think a lot of times, like even for me, like when I first started playing entrepreneur, it was okay, here's the concept of what I'd like to do. And here's sort of like a general vague, all right, this would be nice. But I think getting super specific and dialed in and saying, like, put a number out there that basically scares you just a little bit, because what it does is it creates a fire underneath you that, like, okay, great, that's the mission of where we're headed. And every day that I don't do something, every day that I don't go on a podcast, every day that I don't put something out on YouTube, every day I don't do this, or I try and build and do what I'm doing better, then somebody else is worse off because of it. Right. So, like, if you
hmm,
have your certain skill set, like yours might be here connecting with people, sharing a podcast and everything else,
yeah.
then awesome. Like I say, like, what is that mission? How many people are we trying to help? And for ours, we want to help 50,000 amazing coaches, speakers, trainers, consultants, course creators to be able to get that message out to the masses by 2030. So, it's okay, great. We have a duty, we have an obligation to build all these pieces, and then to be able to share that with individuals. So it's not just us helping them. When we help them, they go on and they help so many other people. So it creates this like really cool ripple effect. And then it becomes a lot of fun.
Great. So, let's talk about how to grow your coaching business without getting buried in tech overwhelm. So, for the coaches listening, who are deep in the overwhelm right now, what is the first, most practical step you recommend them to take to start untangling themselves from it?
For sure. It's a great question. I think the first thing I will always say from just a principle foundational piece is less is more.
Mm,
And so I think probably one of the biggest things that I see the biggest mistake I probably see a lot of coaches make is they try and be a lot of things. And it's not their fault. I think they haven't gone through maybe that trial or error, or just trying to figure out like, hey, when I say I'm a life coach, great. The biggest differentiator is, what is the result? Like, there has to be a very specific result. So, I'd say whatever your thing is, it has to be one particular thing that so if I can, and clearly in one sentence say, I help this person get this result in this time period, guaranteed, then what we were doing, again, it goes back to that triangle. So synergy, like, are you super clear on what that looks like? And if I say your name, like if I say Ezekiel, like, what
mm,
does that mean? And there's like, cool, Ezekiel. Oh man, he's the podcast guy, right? So he talks all about, how do you fail forward? How do you learn from that? When somebody else says your name, can they clearly identify that you helped this person to achieve that? Awesome. That's the one that I need to refer to all my friends. And so I'd say first and foremost, you need complete clarity on exactly what it is, who you serve, how you serve them. Once you have that, The two next pieces that I would focus on is I would do some type of, live event based on whatever your specialty is, because that's the easiest way, in my opinion, to be able to share that message. It could be something as simple as like a 90-minute workshop, and then just an invite of like, hey, cool, if you got value from this, this is how we can move forward. Because where most coaches that they don't do is they don't make enough noise, and they're just very, to themselves, and they know that they're really good, but they're not getting enough eyeballs on what it is, on how they support people. So that would be the first thing I would say is like, at least get out there and start focusing on sales is going to be the biggest piece. From the technical perspective, at bare minimum, I would have what I call an authority site. So versus a website, which is just kind of like, hey, it's a whole business card. Here's like my contact. Here's about me. Here's things that I like to do. I'm the founder. Authority site just simply says, okay, cool. This is exactly how I help you. This is how I can serve you. Here's the next steps. Doesn't make sense to move forward. And so I'd say having that sort of as like a foundational piece. So it's like, if I go and I check out your site, I'm like, sweet, either this is a guy that I want to vibe with and like I want to work with, or not. But at least it offers for a way for somebody to come and identify, cool, this is a person who can solve my problems. Here's a fun little hack that I always recommend. Most times when you go to somebody's website, they typically say book a call. The problem is they go straight to the calendar. My recommendation is I would have one piece in the middle of that. That's sort of like a little mini survey that says, awesome, before we hop on a call, please answer just a couple of quick questions so I can better understand where you're at. And then you can ask, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. And now when we hop on the call, I can treat it more like a physician where I understand, like, what are your hurdles? What are you trying to overcome? What's your challenges? Are you ready to get started? And we can have a much more productive conversation. So between live events and authority site to be able to capture information, I would have bare minimum start there. Because then at least people understand who you are and how you help.
Great. So, Brendan, you talk about the difference between coaches that uh, stay stuck at a few thousands a month versus those who scale. How much of that quote unquote stuckness do you think is directly related to the tech chaos you help solve?
Yeah, and I think it's a mix of a couple different things, because the other thing I tell people too, especially when it comes to virtual events and having done that for about 4, almost 5 years, you can have the best tech on the world. You can have a gorgeous funnel, you can have follow-ups, you can have an application page, and all that can work phenomenally. But the hardest part is always getting butts in seats. And it's always a matter of making noise. There was something I learned at a Grant Cardone conference, and I never forgot it. He said, best known always beats best. And so for a person that might be as half as talented or less than you, if they make more noise than you do, they will always win. So, I'd say it's probably this really fine mix. And I have a graph and I'm happy to show it to you, but essentially like the top half of the graph on this authority ecosystem map that I have is all like the outward energy, right? So it's the social, it's the blogging, it's the content, it's the hopping on podcasts. And then below that outwards, motion and commotion is the systems that happen. So like, right, I'm going to make all the noise out here, but if I pull people in, can I bring them down here on a really solid foundation that allows me to leverage all this traction that I just got? Because what good does it do if I, for example, were to put you on Oprah and all of a sudden you have 10,000 people come to your site immediately? Do you have a way to capture that? Do you have a way to put them on a calendar? Do you have a way to systematically follow up with them or to put them on a waiting list? And the answer is most people don't. So like every time that you do not have something that allows you to be prepared for when you have an opportunity. I remember I read a book. It said, we do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And
Hmm.
so, I think my suggestion was be more advantageous and put those things in now, versus when I see a lot of times people will get a lot of really good traction. And then all of a sudden, like their back ends look like a dumpster fire and it's not clear. There's stuff all over the place and it becomes really hard, not just for them, but if they ever bring a team member in to understand what's going on, when is it happening? What is this workflow? So I'd say the sooner you can do something like that, the way better off you're going to be.
Great, great. So, Brendan, being someone who has experienced firsthand setbacks and overwhelm, what advice would you have for someone generally going through any form of setback or failure in their daily activities, whether in their career, in their business, or whatever they might be doing. What advice would you have to give to somebody like that and on how to get out of it?
Yeah, I'd say it's twofold. Um, there's a phenomenal book called Good to Great, and so I recommend that to anyone that's never read it. And the concept, so it's two pieces. One, I'd say whatever you're doing, if you're feeling overwhelmed, we need to look, are you even doing the right things? Like, is
Mm,
the vision the way that you're heading? Is that a way that's going to help you hit this overall vision that you have? Right. So that's why I said synergy has to be there. You have to say, okay, this is how I want to show up. And most of the times they want to have more leads. They want to have more sales. They want to impact more lives. Awesome. How much money do you want? How many clients does that look like? Like all the rest of these. So are you clear that the model that you have actually will achieve the goal of what it is you're looking to do? So like there's a reason I will never touch physical products and I will never do brick and mortar, because your margins regardless can be anywhere from 1% to maybe 12%, and versus digital versus coaching, all the rest of that, like it's a very different game. So I'd say first look at your model and say, okay, great. If I'm doing everything and it's just a matter of time and I'm on the, then the second piece is I would say look at whatever your daily habits are. I think overwhelm is really just a state of mentality and perspective. So if I wake up in the morning and I'm stressed and I'm frustrated, okay, what are things? So for any Tony Robbins fans that are watching this, if you want to change your state, you can do it instantaneously. So physiology, focus, and language. So physiology, how am I moving my body? Do I stand up straight? Am I focusing on my breathing? The focus and the language piece, do you practice meditation in the morning? Do you go for a run? Do you do a workout? Are you putting good food in your body? So I think it's a total mix between understanding that, yes, I'm on the right track, and B, I'm doing everything that I can from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint to be the best version of myself that I can. Because there's days, dude, where I have gotten my ass handed to me, and going to, do a workout with good food and all the rest of it, like that at least gives me an edge. So the next day, I can come in clear, I can think clear, with a head straight. I've also had days where that was not the case. And I've learned the hard way through sometimes, dude, I'd be stressed as hell. And, 6, 7 years ago, like, dude, there was a couple times where I was drinking first thing in the morning because I was that frustrated and I was that stressed. And I think people do go through that. And that was
yeah.
probably one of the failures too. Like I learned very quickly that does nothing but compound the issue. And it makes
Mm,
it like that much worse. It does not, you want to have the clearest focused mindset you possibly can. So it's like, do the best that you can for yourself here, and then show up as that person that you desire to become, and how you want to present yourself. And that I think will translate every time that you have a sales call, every time you go on, you do an event or whatever that is. So part emotional, uh, part intentional.
great, great. That's very, very insightful. Thanks for sharing, Brendan. So tell us, what does the word, or rather, what does being successful really mean to you?
Yeah, I think successful means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Um, for mine, I think successful. So I'll probably put successful with maybe a couple other words. The ability to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. That for me is what successful looks like. And so in order to be able to achieve those things, I got to surround myself by the kind of individuals that I want to be around. I need to have the financial means to be able to do that. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but if I were to simplify it, what I want, when I want, with who I want, and yeah, that freedom portion's always been huge to me, which is part of the reason why I was not a huge fan of corporate, because obviously it's, you clock in, you have lunch, you clock out. Uh, yeah, that would be my answer.
Fantastic. So, finally, for listeners who are inspired by this conversation and want to learn more about your work, or perhaps follow your journey on the authority protocol, or maybe even join your coaching, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah. So coachuntangled.com is probably the easiest way. We're putting a whole bunch of resources together just to help support individuals through this. Cause like I said, I learned a lot of stuff the hard way. And so if I can give tools, resources, tips, hacks, tricks to to make it like super simplistic, like create great, how do I come into this world? How do I set a solid foundation? How do I go and make some noise and then attract the right kind of individuals in? We're looking to always keep adding things onto there. We have a YouTube channel we're putting out here soon. So yeah, coachuntangled.com would be a great way to connect.
Fantastic. So, Brendan, it's been a really insightful and interesting conversation with you, and I'm excited to have you on the show today.
I appreciate it. Ezekiel, you have a great show, man. Thank you so much for hosting it.
All right, Brendan.